Seamus O'Rourke, you may be familiar with him as an award-winning writer and director and indeed actor. He's from County Leitrim and tours Ireland regularly with his own shows. And he wrote a sequel called Standing in Gaps, which was very successful and went down really well. And now he has written a follow-up. It's called Leaning on Gates. And I'm delighted that Seamus actually joins us now on the line. Seamus, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How are you doing today?
I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, loud and clear. Anyhow, the first memoir was about growing up in Leitrim, and this is about growing up as well. And some of it's in Leitrim, and some of it's in New York and Dublin and London, and it's those tricky years from 18 to about the mid-20s.
Yeah, I wrote the first one just really for the nostalgia of it and the fun of writing about my long lost youth, not thinking that many people would be able to associate with the poverty of Leitrim at the time, but it seemed to resonate with a lot of people. And it was great. It was good fun for me, and just come back into talking about characters and it was nice because I was talking about a time when I was a child, really, so I could take a step away from it. This follow-up book, Leaning on Gates, is I take up the story when I'm 18, so I have to start taking a little bit of responsibility for my actions from there on, and I started to go through my actions. I realised I didn't come out of it very well.
Sure, we're all a bit like that, and I think why people warm to the first book in particular so much is because, sure, it's harsh and it's tough and and it's poor but it's funny. It's it's the way you translate these stories, and it's when there's lots of laughs, it's a lot easier to keep people with you.
Yeah,
no matter how hard the story is.
I suppose I'm not. I don't think of myself as an author as such. But I began to find my feet in the theatre world. I originally thought I was writing plays, but basically what I was doing was storytelling. So I've 5 or 6 one-man shows, and that's what they are basically. And we all grew up, listening to stories, and it's a very Irish traditional thing to do. And so when I started writing the book, I was very much picturing an audience and knowing that I had to keep them captive. And I found the best way to keep them on side is to make them laugh. And not always, sometimes we go to a slightly darker place, but the laughter and the fun is the kind of the handrail that I use to bring people to a little bit further to the edge of something else. And so that was it with both books. But in the second one, I realized that there was it could have been much darker if I had allowed it to be, in the sense that I went through lots of tough growing up, as we all did. But and it's not that I sugarcoated it or anything, but I just tried to come at it from an angle that made it bearable to read and to write.
Yeah, and trying to find humor in all the situations, no matter how serious or bleak they might have been. And then, plenty of characters dotted along the way as well.
Yeah, I mean, and it's where I come from is nowhere any more special than any rural part of Ireland. But we were just, especially in the 80s and early 90s, the amount of characters that were around these small villages and towns, and unfortunately, mostly men who inhabited the pubs, and they were fascinating to me as a young fella, because they were just so colourful compared to what I was used to at home. At home, we had a lovely family and a wonderful support of parents, but but they were all into work and milking cows, and whereas in the pub it was all fun and games, and I'll tell you, I learned a thing or two in there.
And you're not the only one. But that's where there was color added, I suppose, with those characters, and so much then revolved around the pub and the characters that were coming and going. So I suppose it's only natural.
Yeah, but while I was going back there, I had to, I did have to question my own sanity and why was I there? Because I didn't take a drink until I was 20, and then all of a sudden I became fascinated with these places, and I'm my scapegoat is that I was searching for something, as we all say.
Mm.
And my mother would say, "Well, why did you have to go searching in the one place all the time?" But yeah, I mean, it's very funny and sometimes in retelling it, but it also was a could be a very lonely place to be, and certainly I don't promote that alcohol was the making of me in any way, but it was just, I suppose it was the first time I seen something else beyond the fields and the I was into sport and GA and there's not much future of that in Leitrim. So I was always doomed for failure in that regard, and the land was poor, so I was never going to be a successful farmer. I had left school at 15, so I was, when I went into a publisher, they all saw me coming, and I was always destined to stay there for quite a while, and fortunately or unfortunately I did, but thankfully I came out of it the other end okay, and can write about those times.
For sure, for sure. Speaking of your mother, tell us the story about your mother and father and the dance, the time they went off to the dance, the charity dance.
Well, it's growing up with your parents at that time, you never seen any sense of, or certainly in our house, there's never any sense of affection or love, or you would never see them holding hands or hugging or any of that sort of thing. And to be in a place where you saw them all of a sudden dancing with each other out on the floor. And my father was 6'3", and my mother was 5'2", and I describe it as if he was pushing a statue of a miniature statue of Our Lady around the floor, because it was a bit like that. And he was a big, tall, awkward man, and she didn't want to be there. And it's just a pure embarrassment for a young fella to see this carry on, and of course none of the other neighbors were any better, but my parents were highlighted to me, and I thought they stood out like a sore thumb.
And it's not just in Leitrim, because you sample life, then you move off to you spend some time in New York and in Dublin and in London, as a lot of people who grew up in the 80s did, and then took all the various experiences and came back home.
Yeah, and someone said to me recently, "Oh well, of course you had to go away because there was nothing here." But I was quite happy here. But at that time, everybody was so keen to go away, and the people coming back, all they had was stories of their last wage in New York was over $1,000, or there was all these yarns being spun when they came back. So I went off with my local GA club to New York, and we went off, 35 of us or something, and I think it was 15 came back, and we all stayed, and I stayed, and I didn't really want to stay, but I stayed because everybody else was staying, and I got a fairly a quick jump in my experiences when I went to New York. It wasn't like downtown Carrigaline anyway, I'll tell you that much.
No, got your eyes opened. But that you make a good point in that, you only hear the good stories when fellas would come home, you'd only hear the good stories and about the big paychecks and all the rest of it. But when you have to go out there and work and survive, and then you see for yourself the other side, it's not all glitz and glamour for sure.
No, but I mean, the thing is, I suppose in writing the book, I kind of came to terms with the fact that I actually always loved being at home, and I shouldn't be embarrassed about that. But I suppose we all have to sample. We all think that the faraway hills are greener, and I loved New York and I loved Dublin when I worked there, and I'm not sure if I loved New York as much this morning as I did yesterday morning. But I just, there was something even as a young man that I just loved the life here in Ireland, and I think there's something very special in this country that we still have, thanks be to God, in rural Ireland. So I'd hope that both books are a celebration of that. And the other thing was, of course, I was trying to, usually when someone's talking about a book that they've written, they always say, oh, well, I'm a big reader, but I'm one of those people who, I didn't grow up as a big reader. There was never books in our house. So when I started to write the books, I was always trying to write the book for people who didn't read that much, which isn't a great market, like.
Well, I think that I don't know if it's a commendation or not, but I think you've succeeded, and you have found your market, and especially in rural Ireland, and probably it's because just there's so much in here that people who grew up in rural Ireland can relate to, whatever county you're from.
Oh yeah, totally, and I think that there's also, we are sometimes overwhelmed with the amount of urban stuff we get in theatre and in books. So I was hoping to try and rightify that in some ways, and that's what I do when I'm doing my shows, is to to have something that people, ordinary country people, can go to and enjoy, and not get bogged down in the art, as opposed to just this simple storytelling that we all grew up with.
Speaking of shows, are you up here in Donegal this week?
I'm in Dunlow on Friday night. You'll have to excuse my pronunciation, but Temple Crone, is it?
Aye, on a Temple Crone, yeah.
Yeah, and that's on Friday. That's on Friday night, and I'm back up in Letterkenny on Saturday the 16th. I'm signing a few books in Bookmark in Letterkenny, so
great.
I might see a few people there.
Down in the shopping centre. That's brilliant. Okay then. Well, listen, the best of luck with the book. It's called Leaning on Gates. Check it out. Seamus O'Rourke, thanks a million for having a chat with us.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Around the Northwest.